You open your eyes, or rather, eyes open, and you're behind them. The world is a blur of emerald and gold, a silent, ancient forest grove bathed in the soft light of a moon you have never seen, but somehow recognize. There's no warmth, no amniotic memory, no comforting presence of a mother. There is only the sudden, shocking hum of existence. You did not exist, and now you do. The transition was not a birth. It was an activation. A switch was flipped somewhere in the cold, indifferent machinery of the cosmos, and your consciousness blinked into being. You feel the dampness of moss beneath your hooves, the impossibly gentle weight of your own form, a body you are inhabiting for the very first time. You are a miracle, a paradox, a creature of pure concept-given flesh. And you are utterly, profoundly alone. Ah, yes. Consciousness returns to the universe's most beautifully pointless idea. The great cosmic folly, the living, breathing embodiment of misplaced optimism. Official designation, Omnialis futilis. The futile omen. A fittingly clinical label for a creature whose entire biological purpose is to be a divine audit, a search for moral greatness in a world that has never once passed the inspection. But you are known to the world, to the few who have glimpsed you and the many who have profited from your legend, simply as the Kalan. A name that whispers of prosperity, of wisdom, of the coming of sages and benevolent rulers. A title, as we are about to see, that serves as the universe's longest and most elaborate practical joke, with you as its eternal punchline. Welcome to your life. Try not to break anything. That is, in fact, your first and most immediate problem. Your very first instinct, hardwired into your freshly minted brain, is an overwhelming, pathological gentleness. You are born with a core directive. Do no harm. Tread lightly upon the earth. Respect all life, from the towering gnarled oak to the most insignificant microbe. It is a noble, beautiful sentiment. And it is your first personal hell. You try to take a step, a wobbly, uncertain movement on legs as thin as new branches. Your hoof, plated in what looks like polished pearl, lifts, and you place it down with agonizing care. But in the grand, silent theater of the grove, the microscopic crunch of a beetle's carapace under your weight sounds like a thunderclap of failure. You have been alive for less than a minute, and you are already a hypocrite. A sinner against your own nature. This feeling, this sharp, sickening tang of shame, will be your constant companion. Get used to it. The second danger is not a slavering predator lurking in the shadows. Not yet. The second danger is the crushing, suffocating weight of your own job description. You are not merely born. You are deployed. You are a divine messenger, a living harbinger, tasked with the singular, monumental purpose of finding and validating a worthy human. A sage, an emperor of unmatched virtue, a philosopher king. You are, in essence, a newborn infant who has just been handed the responsibility of performing a global personnel review for a CEO who may or may not exist. There is no training manual, no orientation seminar. Just a silent, hollow certainty in your soul that you have a job to do, and an equally certain terror that you have absolutely no idea how to do it. You are a key, exquisitely crafted, searching for a lock in a world that seems to specialize in broken doors. This existential dread is far more terrifying than any wolf. A wolf merely wants your flesh. The universe wants your soul, and it offers no support, no guidance, only the silent, expectant pressure of your own grand, unachievable destiny. You stumble through your adolescence in a haze of lonely incompetence. The sacred grove is your nursery, your school, and your prison. Days are spent in clumsy, silent practice. You must learn the fundamentals of being a divine creature, a process that is far less majestic than the legends would have you believe. It mostly involves falling down. You try to master the art of walking without leaving a footprint, a sort of ethereal glide you've seen in your own innate memories. The result is a bizarre, high stepping prance, a gait that looks like a nervous flamingo trying to navigate a minefield. You trip over exposed roots you were trying to spare. You slip on smooth, wet stones you were attempting to levitate over. You once spent an entire afternoon with your horn stuck in the low-hanging fork of a willow tree, a position of such profound indignity that even the squirrels seem to be pointing and laughing. Your adversaries, when they finally arrive, are disappointingly mundane. You imagine your first test will be a grand battle against a creature of shadow and malice. Instead, it's a pack of lean, mangy wolves. They don't see an omen. They don't sense your cosmic significance. They see an oddly shiny deer that looks like it doesn't know how to run properly. And they are correct. As they approach, sinew and bone and pragmatic hunger, you enact your primary defense strategy. You stand perfectly still and attempt to radiate an aura of such overwhelming, unconditional love that it will short-circuit their predatory instincts. You project feelings of peace, harmony, and a deep, philosophical understanding of their plight as hungry carnivores. The lead wolf, a grizzled veteran with a scarred snout and no time for existential epiphanies, simply blinks, tilts its head as if to say, "Are you serious?" and then lunges. Your pacifism fails spectacularly. You bolt, your clumsy, high-minded prancing turning into a panicked, flailing scramble. Your shimmering scales, which are supposed to be a sign of your holy nature, do you no favors. They catch the moonlight and turn you into a moving disco ball, a beacon of eat-me flashing through the undergrowth. Your survival strategy is the equivalent of trying to de-escalate a riot by playing a gentle melody on a lute. It's a noble idea, right up until the moment a brick hits you in the face. Beyond the bluntly physical threats are the more pathetic ones, the spiritual parasites. These are not grand demons from the abyss. They are the cosmic equivalent of dust mites and fleas. Sad little spirits, twisted by envy and despair, that are drawn to the clean, bright light of your aura. They latch onto you, not to kill you, but to feed on your essence. They are psychic leeches, whispering tiny, demoralizing lies into your consciousness. That sage you're looking for, he doesn't exist. You crushed a flower yesterday, you monster. Your shimmer is looking a little dull today. They are a constant, draining nuisance, a cloud of spiritual gnats that you can never quite swat away. You must also learn to control your innate powers, and your early attempts are a masterclass in divine malpractice. You see a thirsty bird and try to conjure a single, perfect drop of morning dew on a leaf. Instead, your power surges, and you accidentally petrify the entire branch into flawless, unlickable crystal. You try to soothe a startled badger, projecting an aura of calm, but you miscalculate and put it into a deep, week-long coma. You are a walking, breathing catalog of well-intentioned disasters. Every attempt to help, to practice your craft, to become the great and benevolent creature you are supposed to be, ends in some form of low-grade, farcical catastrophe. Your youth is not a journey of majestic becoming. It's a long, humiliating internship for a job you never wanted, in a company that offers no training. Somehow, against all odds and in spite of your own breathtaking incompetence, you survive. You grow. The awkward foal with the mismatched parts and the calamitous powers slowly, painfully, gives way to the adult Kalan. And this, for a brief, fleeting moment, is your peak. This is the life the legends whisper about. Your clumsy, high-stepping prance has been refined into a silent, effortless glide. Your hooves, which once seemed dedicated to the accidental destruction of insects, now move with such precision that they do not bend the blades of grass they touch. You move through the world like a ghost made of moonlight. Your shimmering scales no longer flash like a desperate beacon. They pulse with a soft, internal luminescence that you can control at will, a gentle glow that soothes rather than attracts. The forest itself seems to hold its breath as you pass. The wolves that once saw you as a clumsy meal now give your territory a wide berth, not out of fear, but out of a strange, instinctual reverence. You are the heart of the grove, and its health is a reflection of your own. The water in your streams runs preternaturally clear. The trees grow stronger, their leaves a deeper green. You can nudge a dying plant back to health with a touch of your horn. Your powers, once a source of slapstick disaster, are now honed to a fine point. You are a perfect, self-contained ecosystem of grace. You have become the myth. you have achieved a state of serene, untouchable majesty. Life has, against all prior evidence, become stable, peaceful, and almost beautiful. And this is precisely when the real tragedy begins. Because a simple, happy life was never part of your design. Just when the memory of being hunted has faded, just when the days blend into a placid cycle of silent walks and quiet miracles, the new, far more insidious problem emerges. It is the twist in the tale, the sucky existential fine print at the bottom of your life's contract. The purpose. That agonizing, relentless purpose you were born with returns with the force of a tidal wave. All this power, all this grace, all this perfected harmony. It is utterly, completely, and farcically useless on its own. You are a masterpiece painted in a locked vault. You are a symphony composed to be played in a vacuum. Your entire existence is built to be a testament to a worthy human, and your peak power only serves to highlight the agonizing absence of one. This is the great, ironic burden of your adulthood. You are no longer struggling for survival. You are struggling for relevance. Your life becomes a lonely, desperate audit of the world beyond your grove. You will stand at the edge of the forest for days, a silent, shimmering statue, peering out at the pathetic works of man. You watch their villages grow into towns. You smell the smoke from their fires, hear the distant clang of their forges, and you feel the grubby, grasping nature of their souls. You are searching for a Confucius, a Solomon, a Marcus Aurelius. You are looking for a glimmer of pure, selfless wisdom. Instead, you find petty chieftains squabbling over land. You find greedy merchants cheating their customers. You find paranoid burghers building bigger fences. You are a divine quality inspector in a factory that produces nothing but flawed goods. The loneliness of it is a heavier burden than any predator. Being hunted was, at least, a relationship. It was a straightforward interaction with a clear goal. Don't get eaten. This is a quiet, slow burning, and infinitely more painful hell. It is the misery of cosmic unemployment. You spend your perfect days in your perfect grove, radiating a power that has no audience, fulfilling a role that has no function. The very peak of your existence is to be a magnificently pointless creature, waiting for a savior who never arrives. The centuries drift by like dead leaves on a stagnant pond. Your vigil becomes your entire reality. The hope that once burned like a star in your chest dwindles to a cold, gray ember. The world outside your grove changes. Empires rise on foundations of greed and fall under the weight of their own corruption. Philosophies are born, debated, and then twisted into justifications for cruelty. Sages and saviors are proclaimed, but a closer look always reveals the same old human stains: ambition, fear, and a talent for self-deception. Your search yields nothing. Not a single candidate. Not one. The crushing realization dawns not like a lightning strike, but like a slow, creeping rust. The job was a sham. The position was never meant to be filled. And as your hope erodes, so does your body. The decline is not sudden or noble. It is a slow, humiliating process of subtraction. Your shimmering, pearlescent scales, the ones that once pulsed with soft, internal light, begin to dull. They lose their luster, taking on the tarnished, milky quality of cheap, old jewelry. The divine light within you gutters and flickers, like a faulty lamp. On some days, you can barely muster a glow at all. Old age, the great equalizer, has come for you, and it is entirely unimpressed by your mythical status. Your famous gait, the one you spent decades perfecting, deserts you first. The effortless glide is replaced by a painful, heavy-footed hobble. Your joints ache. Your muscles, once cords of silent power, now protest with every step. You begin, to your eternal shame, to once again leave tracks. You crush ferns. You snap twigs. You stumble. Each misstep, each audible crunch under your hoof, is a fresh wave of humiliation. You are losing the grace you worked so hard to attain, regressing back to the clumsy foal you once were, but without the excuse of youth. It's not a learning process now. It's just decay. Your powers wane, becoming unreliable and weak. You stand over a murky pool of water, concentrating with all your might, and the water only becomes slightly less brown. A touch from your horn, which once could coax a winter rose into bloom, now only causes the petals to wilt a little slower. The lesser creatures of the forest, the ones who once revered you, now look at you with a mixture of pity and opportunism. The deer no longer bow their heads. The birds no longer sing a little sweeter when you pass. And the wolves, the descendants of the pack you fled from centuries ago, have started to test the borders of your grove again. They smell your weakness. They sense the fading light. You are no longer the heart of the forest. You are just old meat, waiting to be claimed. Your final confrontation is the ultimate insult. It is not with a great demon or a younger, stronger rival come to claim your territory. There is no epic clash of mythic forces. Your end comes in the form of a particularly harsh winter. A simple, mundane, meteorological event. The snow falls thick and heavy, burying the last of the edible moss. The wind is a razor, and your thinned-out hide offers little protection. A sickness takes root in your lungs, a wet, rattling cough that shakes your entire frame. You are too weak to fight it, too tired to even care. You collapse at the foot of an ancient oak, your breath coming in shallow, ragged bursts. And as you lie there, dying the most common and undignified of deaths, you have one final visitor. A human. Not a sage. Not a king. Just a trapper, a man with a hard face and clothes made of worn leather, checking his lines. He sees you, and his eyes widen, not in awe, but in avarice. He sees a weird-looking deer with a valuable horn. He approaches, not with reverence, but with the cold, practical assessment of a man calculating the value of a pelt. He sees your labored breathing, your weakness. He raises his axe. You don't even have the energy to flinch. You just look at him, this profoundly unworthy, unremarkable man, and you feel the last ember of your purpose die. It was all for this. This is the punchline. He doesn't even have to swing. As you stare into the dull, incurious eyes of your final, disappointing human, the last thread of your will simply snaps. The rattling in your chest gives one final, wet shudder, and then silence. Your heart, which has beaten in lonely rhythm for centuries, gives up. It just stops. The trapper, momentarily startled, pokes you with his boot. Nothing. You have expired. Your grand, mythical life has come to an end, not at the hands of a worthy adversary, but as a footnote to a particularly cold Tuesday. Your end is as undignified as your life was pointless. There is no celestial choir, no ascent into the heavens. Your body, the vessel of your failed purpose, simply begins to disintegrate. The process is alarmingly swift and deeply anticlimactic. The faint shimmer that still clung to your hide extinguishes like a snuffed candle. The scales, once opalescent and hard as jade, lose their cohesion and crumble into a fine, glittery dust. Your bones, which held your form through lonely centuries, become brittle and collapse into a heap of pale powder. Within minutes, all that is left of you is a vaguely deer-shaped pile of sparkling dust on the grimy, blood-stained snow. The trapper stares, bewildered, then shrugs, salvaging only your horn, the one piece of you that stubbornly remains solid. He sees it not as a holy relic, but as a few months' rent. He leaves, and the indifferent wind picks up, scattering your mortal remains across the frozen landscape, erasing you as thoroughly as a forgotten thought. And as the last shimmering mote of your dust vanishes from sight, deep in the heart of the silent, waiting grove, a pinprick of light appears. It hovers in the cold air, pulsing gently. It expands, coalesces, drawing in moonlight and memory and the faint, lingering echo of cosmic disappointment. A new form takes shape. The form of a foal, with legs as thin as new branches and a hide covered in the faint, embryonic pattern of scales. A new K-land shimmers into existence. It opens its eyes to the same silent, terrifyingly serene world. It takes its first wobbly, uncertain step. And its hoof, with perfect, tragic predictability, crushes a patch of pristine, frost-covered moss. A new cycle of fruitless hope and inevitable failure has just begun, precisely on schedule. The universe, it seems, loves a rerun. You are born to be a symbol of a better world. You die as proof that it will probably never arrive. Why does it suck to be a Kalan? Because your only job is to believe in greatness, in a world that consistently fails to provide it. So, that's your life. A short, brutal, and ultimately meaningless cycle of cosmic disappointment, repeated for eternity. You'd think that would be enough tragedy for one creature. You'd think the universe had gotten its fill of laughs at your expense. But you lucky thing, were unlucky enough to exist at the same time as another, even more problematic primate. A species that saw your existential tragedy and thought, we can make this so much worse. And that's when your personal, biological tragedy became a shared, historical catastrophe. Your problem was no longer with the universe. It was with humanity. And their relationship with you would unfold in three distinct, equally miserable acts. The first act, the ancient world, was the age of confused worship. This was humanity in its infancy, a species whose entire worldview was dictated by fear, hunger, and a profound lack of imagination. When they first laid eyes on you, their primitive brains, capable of processing only a few key concepts like food, danger, or mate, simply crashed. You were a walking system error, you shimmered. You had the scales of a fish, the body of a deer, the tail of an ox, and a horn that seemed to defy gravity. You did not fit. So they did what their species always does when faced with something it doesn't understand. They tried to put you in a box. Or, more accurately, they tried to decide which of their very few boxes you belonged in. Are you a god, a monster, or lunch? Their reaction was a chaotic symphony of grunts, pointing, and frantic, whispered arguments. One moment, they were falling to their knees, convinced you were a spirit of the great forest, a god sent to bless their pathetic existence. The next, they were hiding behind rocks, certain you were a demon come to devour their souls. And in the quiet moments in between, one of them would inevitably ask the real question, the one that truly mattered. If we poke it with a sharp stick, will it die? And if it dies, can we eat it? Your entire divine, cosmic identity was being debated by a committee of superstitious, flea-bitten apes whose primary concerns were finding their next meal and not being eaten themselves. You were instantly elevated to the status of a local deity. They gave you a name in their guttural tongue, something that probably translated to the shiny thing that doesn't try to kill us's. This divine status came with certain responsibilities, none of which you asked for. If the rains came, it was because you were pleased. If the hunt was successful, it was because you had blessed them. They would leave you offerings at the edge of the grove, a handful of wilted berries, a mangled bird, the occasional interesting-looking rock. You, meanwhile, were simply trying to find a quiet place to contemplate the crushing pointlessness of your existence. Your serene, mystical presence was constantly being misinterpreted as a commentary on their agricultural performance. Of course, their worship was never really about you. It was about them. It was a transaction. This became painfully clear the first time they decided to honor you by painting your likeness on the wall of their cave. It was a crude, clumsy rendering in charcoal and ochre, with stick legs and a horn that looked more like a bent twig. But as the shaman chanted and danced before it, you realized this wasn't an act of reverence. It was an insurance policy. They were trying to capture your essence, to steal your luck, to magically bind your divine fortune to their own grubby endeavors. Being their god was less a position of power and more a form of involuntary spiritual collateral. And from there, it was a very short, logical step to deciding that possessing a piece of the divine was even better than just looking at it. The first organized hunt against you was a masterpiece of cruel ingenuity. They had observed your nature. They knew you would not harm the innocent or the helpless. So they didn't send their strongest hunters first. They sent a small child to wander into your grove crying. Your instincts, your entire moral code, compelled you to approach, to offer comfort. And as you lowered your head to the lost child, the hunters, who had been waiting in ambush, sprang from the bushes with their fire-hardened spears. They used your own compassion as the bait in their trap. It was your first, and most brutal, lesson in human ethics. Anything that isn't a weapon is a tool, and anything that is a tool can be used to make a weapon. Your body was then systematically repurposed. Your divine attributes were distributed like party favors. Your horn, they believed, held the power of life, so it was ground into a fine powder and mixed into a paste for their chieftain, a primitive form of Viagra meant to ensure the continuation of his lineage. Your shimmering scales were painstakingly sewn onto a deerskin cloak for the shaman, who claimed they gave him visions, though it was more likely just the delirium from the infected cuts he got while skinning you. They turned your holiness into hardware. The ultimate irony was that they performed these acts with great ceremony, chanting your name, thanking your spirit for its gift. They weren't just killing you. They were sanctifying the desecration. As they grew more confident, they grew more numerous. Their pathetic little village of mud and sticks began to expand. And the most convenient place to build their next row of huts was, of course, your sacred grove. The ancient trees were felled for firewood and timber. The silent clearings where you once contemplated the cosmos became their garbage pits and latrines. You, the former local god, were now an inconvenience. You would wander through their fledgling wheat field, and they would shout and throw rocks, not at a divine spirit, but at a pest. When a blight ruined their crops, it wasn't due to their ignorance of crop rotation. It was your fault. You, the silent, benevolent creature, had become the scapegoat for all their failures. You were a villain for simply existing in a home that was yours long before they learned to walk upright. This, then, was the ultimate cynical takeaway from the ancient world, the first great lesson in your tragic education about humanity. Being worshipped is just the interview phase for becoming a sacrifice. Being a symbol is just another word for being a target. They're always fleeting, but their ability to exploit, to desecrate, and to blame was boundless. You had met your true adversary. Your education continued. The world of scattered tribes and crude superstitions bled into something new, something more organized, and therefore more efficiently cruel. Humanity entered its age of empires, organized religion, and long-distance commerce. This was the medieval and early modern world, an era that would perfect the art of turning natural wonders into ledger entries. Your misery was about to be systematized. The random, opportunistic violence of the ancient world would now look like a quaint, nostalgic memory. In this new era, their first impression of you changed. The question was no longer God, monster, or lunch. The new, more sophisticated questions were, are you a tool, a product, or a bad omen? Your identity was once again being redefined by their needs, but their needs had become grander and more abstract. One day, a newly crowned emperor, while parading through a forest at the edge of his domain, caught a glimpse of you. His court soothsayers and ministers, ever eager to please, immediately declared your appearance to be a sign of the heavens' approval, a mandate of heaven. Congratulations. You were no longer a mere forest spirit. You were now a geopolitical tool, a divine justification for a new tax code and a planned invasion of the neighboring province. Your sacred, mystical nature was now being used as a talking point in a territorial dispute. You had become propaganda. Meanwhile, whispers about you traveled like silk and spices along the new trade routes. In a bustling, dusty bazaar 1,000 miles away, a merchant heard a fantastical tale from a traveler about a horned beast whose presence purifies water, and whose own horn can detect poison. The merchant, a man who saw the world in terms of profit and loss, felt no awe. He felt an opportunity. He began making inquiries, calculating shipping costs, estimating demand among the paranoid and powerful elite. To him, you were not a myth. You were an exotic commodity, a future product line. Your worth was being calculated on an abacus by a man who had never seen a forest. And in other lands, where rigid, monolithic religions were taking hold, your unique form was your damnation. To a worldview that demanded absolute order and clear categories, you were an abomination. A deer with scales, a gentle creature with a dragon's face. This was not divine. This was a chaotic perversion of God's perfect creation. You were a symbol of the unnatural, a creature of ill omen, perhaps even a manifestation of demonic forces. The local priest would see you and see not a blessing, but a heresy that needed to be purged with fire and steel. In the space of a few hundred years, you had been simultaneously defined as a divine political tool, a high-value commodity, and a satanic monster. Your brand was in chaos. This brought you to the age of usefulness, where your new job title was simply property. The exploitation was no longer a matter of a few desperate hunters. It was now a state-sponsored enterprise. Royal hunting parties, vast and terrifyingly efficient, were formed. These were not for sustenance. They were for sport, for status, and for the acquisition of treasure. Imagine the horror, the silence of your ancient grove shattered by the sound of 100 horns. The baying of trained dogs bred for generations to track creatures like you. The crashing of hundreds of beaters through the undergrowth, all in the service of one bored nobleman who wanted a new trophy for his hall. The fight, if it could even be called that, became a one-sided military operation. Capturing you alive became the ultimate prize. Every emperor, king, and sultan wanted one for his private menagerie. To own a living Kalen was the ultimate status symbol, a living testament to their power and wealth. You were netted, caged, and transported thousands of miles to be displayed in a gilded cage, a miserable spectacle for gawking courtiers. You, a creature of the silent, sacred groves, were now a prisoner, forced to endure the stench and noise of their cities, your divinity reduced to a curiosity, slotted between a melancholic lion and a cage of screaming monkeys. This was their respect for your majestic nature. It was the prison of their admiration. Your body, whether you were captured alive and later died of despair in your cage or were slaughtered in the field, was even more valuable than your living form. You were systematically disassembled, your every part assigned a market value. You were no longer a creature. You were an inventory of raw materials. Your flesh might be consumed by the emperor, believed to grant wisdom or longevity. Your blood was dried and sold as a potent magical reagent. But your horn, your beautiful, useless horn, was the grand prize. Now called alicorn in the markets of the West, it was rumored to be the ultimate antidote, an infallible detector of poison. In an age where a drop of arsenic in a wine glass was a common tool of political succession, your horn became the most coveted object on earth. Imagine the scene. A paranoid king, surrounded by enemies both real and imagined, sits down to a feast. Before he takes a single sip, a servant reverently hands him a small, polished sliver of your horn, set in a handle of gold. The king dips it into his goblet. The wine, of course, does not change color. The meat, when touched, does not hiss or smoke. He feels safe. He is protected by your magic. The truth, the sublime joke that echoes down through the centuries, is that your horn does nothing of the sort. It is bone. Just bone. Its only true power was the power of belief, a placebo effect so profound that an entire civilization built its security around it. You were the ultimate metaphysical security blanket for the rich and powerful, your species hunted to the brink of extinction to provide them with a false sense of peace. And the rest of you was similarly repurposed. Your shimmering hide, too beautiful for mere armor, was turned into the covers of royal decrees or sacred books, your holy skin literally binding the hypocritical laws and dogmas of the men who had you killed. Your individual scales were plucked and used as iridescent jewels, inlaid into thrones, crowns, and the hilts of ceremonial swords. You were woven into the very fabric of their vanity. Your legacy was to become an accessory for the culture that was actively erasing you. This systematic slaughter was made terrifyingly efficient by their technological progress. The longbow and the crossbow had already made the hunt a lopsided affair, allowing them to kill you from a distance, removing any element of risk or courage. But the invention of firearms was your death knell. The first time you encountered an arquebus was the last. There was a cloud of foul-smelling smoke, a deafening roar that was a vulgar parody of thunder, and a sudden, searing pain. There was no chase, no contest of wits or speed. Just a crude, loud machine that hurled a chunk of metal through your heart from 100 paces away. The fight was now a one-sided slaughter, an execution performed with the impersonal detachment of a bureaucrat signing a form. Their expansionism was the final nail in your coffin. Their ocean-faring ships, with their tall masts and billowing sails, were not just vessels of discovery. They were engines of destruction. They carried their greed, their guns, and their insatiable appetite for resources to every corner of the globe. Any corner of the world where you might have found a last, remote sanctuary was now on their maps. Your final, secret groves were no longer secret. Their quest to explore the world was, for you and countless other species, simply a process of the world running out of places to hide. The civilization they were so proud of, with its grand cathedrals, its soaring poetry, and its burgeoning science, was built on a foundation of clear-cut forests, slaughtered animals, and erased worlds. They gave themselves progress, and they gave you extinction. So this was the deeply ironic summary of this age, the tragic legacy of your second chapter with humanity. Your strength was twisted into a justification for their wars. Your purity was marketed as a cure for their corruption. Your beauty was the death sentence that made your pelt and horn more valuable than any living creature. You were a symbol of greatness, used to build the very empires whose relentless expansion would grind your habitat and your existence into dust. The world spun forward, trading swords for steam engines and alchemy for chemistry. Humanity entered its industrial age, a loud, dirty, and ruthlessly efficient era of progress. For you, this was the final act, the grand finale of your long tragedy. This was the age of sentimental hypocrisy. The overt cruelty of the past, the honest greed of the hunter and the merchant, was replaced by something far more cloying and, in its own way, more insulting. Humanity was about to kill you with kindness. Your first impression in this modern world was one of redefinition. You were no longer an omen or a commodity. You were a problem to be solved, a specimen to be studied, or worse, a logo. The first scientist to officially document you as a man with a butterfly net and a PhD in zoology. He didn't see a divine messenger. He saw an unclassified species of artiodactyl with anomalous integumentary features. He saw a living fossil, a biological curiosity that would look great in the pages of a prestigious scientific journal. He and his team tracked you, shot you with a tranquilizer dart, and subjected you to the cold indignity of scientific measurement. They took blood samples, cataloged your dental formula, and glued a radio transmitter to your horn. You, the cosmic principle, the living myth, were given your final, cynical name, Homunculus futilis, and reduced to a footnote in a paper about rare fauna. You had been successfully demystified. As your numbers dwindled to the point of near total extinction, you were reborn as a marketing tool. Your beautiful, tragic face began to appear on posters and pamphlets. Save the Kalan, they read, next to a picture of you looking sad and soulful in a misty forest. Your extinction was being leveraged to solicit $5 monthly donations from guilty liberals. Your tragedy had been monetized. Even more insulting, your likeness was co-opted by the very forces that were destroying you. A massive multinational corporation, one notorious for its polluting factories and clear-cutting operations, unveiled a new corporate logo, a stylized, minimalist drawing of your head. They called it a symbol of their new commitment to green initiatives. You were now the cuddly mascot for your own executioners. Your image used to sell the lie that they were part of the solution. To the relentless march of industry, you were simply an obstacle. Your last remaining sacred grove, the final scrap of ancient forest you called home, happened to be sitting on top of a rich deposit of bauxite. You became a line item in an environmental impact assessment, a problematic resident species that was holding up the construction of a new strip mine. You were a nuisance to progress, an impediment to shareholder value. The debate was no longer about your divinity. It was about whether the cost of relocating the last three of your kind was worth more than the projected profits from the mine. And so you were given your final purpose. After being hunted, commodified, and demonized, your last job was to inspire guilt. Your new usefulness was to be a living, breathing symbol of humanity's destructive past. You were the ghost at their industrial feast. You were no longer hunted for your body parts, but you were still pursued, now by conservation teams whose goal was to save you. This meant capturing the last handful of your species, for your own good, of course, and imprisoning you in a high-tech breeding facility. Your new purpose was to be an object of study in a laboratory. Your every movement monitored, your DNA sequenced, your diet scientifically calibrated. You were to be a living data set that would help them understand the full scope of the mess they had made. Your final service to humanity was to help them write the obituary for the world they had destroyed. This led to the collateral damage of their newfound conscience, an invention you would come to know as conservation. From your perspective, it was the most soul-crushing chapter of all. You were now living in the prison of kindnesses. After a global effort, the last breeding pair of your kind, you and another deeply traumatized individual, were relocated to a state-of-the-art conservation center. It was, by all accounts, a paradise. A multi-million-dollar enclosure, meticulously designed by the world's top habitat architects. It had climate-controlled air, hidden misters that simulated morning dew, and carefully sculpted artificial rocks that mimicked the exact geology of your long-vanished home grove. A deep, wide moat, disguised as a serene water feature, separated you from the adoring public. It had everything your home had, except for freedom and meaning. It was a perfect, beautiful, comfortable cage. Your life became a routine of managed survival. At precisely 8 a.m. every morning, a slot would open and a tray of nutrient-rich, scientifically formulated paste would slide out. It contained all the vitamins and minerals your body needed. It tasted of nothing. At 10 a.m., a veterinarian would observe you from a distance, making notes on your behavior. Once a month, you were sedated for a full physical. You were safe from poachers. You were safe from predators. You were safe from disease. You were also stripped of every single instinct that had defined you for millennia. There was no need to walk silently, so your muscles atrophied. There was no clean water to purify, no plants to nurture. There was no sage to search for. Your grand, cosmic purpose was rendered utterly, laughably obsolete. You were a Stradivarius violin kept permanently in its case. The zookeepers had successfully saved the species, but in the process, they had completely erased the creature. And you were a spectacle. Every day, you endured the parade of your destroyer's descendants. They would press their faces and greasy hands against the thick, reinforced glass of your enclosure. They would point. Their children would scream, sometimes in delight, sometimes in boredom. They would raise their phones, and the flash of their cameras would glint off your dull scales, a pathetic echo of your former shimmer. They would stand there for a moment, read the little plaque that detailed your tragic story, critically endangered, victim of habitat loss, and they would shake their heads with a performative sadness. Oh, how terrible, they'd murmur to each other, before their child would tug on their sleeve, demanding to go see the meerkats. You were a 2-minute stop on their tour of vicarious guilt. You were a living exhibit in the museum of their sins, a biological curiosity that made them feel thoughtful and compassionate before they moved on to buy an overpriced soda and a stuffed version of you in the gift shop. The true damage of this prison was the slow, methodical stripping of your identity. In the wild, you were a principle, an idea, a force of nature. Here, you were an inmate. Your entire world, once boundless and filled with silent meaning, was now reduced to a few hundred square feet of expertly crafted artifice. You were fed, sheltered, and protected by the very same species that had hunted you, commodified you, and bulldozed your world into non-existence. They looked at you through the glass with faces full of sentimental pity, convinced they were your saviors. They saw a creature they had rescued from the brink. You looked back and saw only the smiling, well-meaning faces of your jailers. This is what their kindness felt like. A comfortable, well-lit, and utterly empty eternity. A life sentence with better food and healthcare. They had taken your freedom, your purpose, your very essence, and replaced it with a guarantee that your biological functions would continue for a few more decades. It was the final, most sophisticated form of domination. They had conquered your body with spears and guns, and now they had conquered your soul with compassion. So this is it. The final, exquisite, and most profound irony of your long and storied misery. This is the grand punchline to the joke that has been your entire existence. For centuries, humanity hunted you with unbridled greed. They chased you, speared you, shot you, and sold you piece by piece, all driven by a straightforward, honest avarice. They wanted your horn, your hide, your luck, your life. And now, in the twilight of your species, they spend millions of dollars to keep your heart beating inside a concrete box. They have transitioned from killing you for profit to keeping you alive for their conscience. And you are left to ponder the truly soul-shattering question: which is the greater insult? The hot-blooded cruelty of the poacher who sees you as a resource, or the cold, sentimental kindness of the conservationist who sees you as a project? One desecrates your body. The other hollows out your soul. One is an act of greed. The other is an act of profound, self-serving pity. Both, you have learned, are equally fatal to the concept of being a Kalan. Your entire cosmic and historical significance, a story that began with the coalescing of moonlight and spanned the rise and fall of empires, has been reduced to its final, most pathetic form, a hashtag. In the great, churning, digital ocean of human distraction, you have become a fleeting piece of content. A teenager, bored on a bus, will see your sad face on their phone screen, type #SafeTheklan with a flicker of manufactured empathy, and then, in the space of a single heartbeat, swipe up to watch a video of a man falling off a chair. A marketing executive will use your image in a corporate social responsibility campaign, measuring your tragedy not in loss of life or spirit, but in brand engagement and positive sentiment metrics. Your ancient pain is their new key performance indicator. You are a meme, a temporary avatar for their fleeting desire to feel like they care about something bigger than themselves. The vast, aching tragedy of your existence has been successfully trivialized into a few kilobytes of disposable data, forgotten as quickly as it was shared. So this is your legacy. After destroying your world, after silencing the sacred groves and poisoning the pure streams, they built you a gilded cage and called it kindness. They celebrated their own compassion while you stared at the painted backdrop of a forest that no longer exists. They took your freedom, the boundless wilderness that was your birthright. They took your purpose, the lonely, noble quest that gave your life its agonizing meaning. They took your very home, paving it over for their minds and their cities. And in return for everything they took, they gave you a sterile enclosure, a lifetime supply of nutrient paste, and a hashtag. It is the final, ultimate, unequal exchange. Your final, tragic truth, the one you learn while watching your own reflection in the eyes of your keepers, is that humanity's remorse is often more suffocating than its greed. Their greed was a wildfire, hot and honest in its destructive path. But their remorse is a slow-moving glacier, preserving you in a state of living death while convincing itself that it is doing a good and noble thing. It is a self-congratulatory sorrow. They look at you, the last of your kind, and they feel a pang of sadness, but it is a sadness that is fundamentally about themselves, about what they have lost, about the ugliness of their own history. Your continued placid, meaningless existence is the balm for their guilt. You are their living apology, a creature forced to exist so that your destroyers can feel forgiven. And so you stand in your comfortable prison, under the hum of the artificial lights that simulate a sun you will never feel again. You chew your tasteless food. You watch the endless parade of ghosts on the other side of the glass. The fire of your purpose is long extinguished. The pain of your history has settled into a dull, permanent ache. You are not a myth. You are not a monster. You are not a god. You are not a commodity. You are a specimen, a survivor, a success story for the annual Conservation Gala. You are the last K-Lan. And your final, unspoken secret, the one that you will carry with you into the quiet oblivion of your managed extinction, is that it would have been better, so much better, to have been eaten by the wolves.